Russia has issued a warning that it may freeze U.S. assets within its borders, including property and cash belonging to American citizens and investors. This follows strong opposition from senior Russian officials to a proposed U.S. bill that would allow for the confiscation of Russian assets in response to Western sanctions. In retaliation, Russia has already frozen substantial foreign assets after Western nations seized approximately $300 billion of Russia's central bank reserves due to the Ukraine conflict. A Moscow court recently approved the seizure of $12.4 million to $34 million from JP Morgan Chase as part of Russia's broader response to Western sanctions, sending shockwaves through the international banking community. JP Morgan, one of the world's largest banks, has cautioned of potential further asset freezes in Russia, sparking concerns among other U.S. financial institutions operating in the country. These actions carry wide-ranging implications that could reshape international finance and geopolitics. Additionally, Russia has extended these measures to European financial institutions. In a significant development impacting the European banking sector, a Russian court has ordered the seizure of $239 million from Deutsche Bank, Germany's largest lender. Similarly, UniCredit, an Italian banking and financial services firm, is facing a $463 million asset seizure related to a lawsuit over a gas processing plant project. Adding to the complexity, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a decree on May 23, 2024, authorizing the confiscation of U.S.-owned assets within Russia. This decree not only permits asset seizures, but also includes a compensation mechanism for Russians impacted by Western sanctions. This creates unprecedented uncertainty for U.S. companies still operating in Russia, as they now face the real possibility of asset confiscation. The ripple effects of Russia's retaliatory measures are already impacting Europe. Commerzbank, another major German financial institution, has been targeted, with Russia freezing $93.7 million worth of its assets, including securities and a central Moscow building owned by the bank. This bold move is likely to have substantial repercussions for German-Russian economic relations, potentially straining a historically strong partnership. To understand the full scope of this economic standoff, it's essential to consider the Western sanctions that led to this point. Spearheaded by the US and the European Union, the West has frozen approximately $300 billion of Russian financial assets, a substantial sum that has drastically limited Russia's ability to engage in the global financial system. The US Treasury has intensified its actions, now requiring banks to disclose Russian assets that could be subject to seizure under new regulations. It's estimated that around $6 billion in Russian assets are held in U.S. banks alone, representing a significant portion of Russia's foreign reserves. These sanctions have severely impacted Russia's central bank reserves and economic stability. In response, the U.S. enacted the Repo Act, a law that permits the confiscation of Russian state assets held in American banks, aiming to penalize Russia while channeling the proceeds to support Ukraine's economy. Banks must report Russian assets by August 2, 2024. However, the law is controversial and likely to face legal challenges, raising questions about international law and the broader implications of asset seizures between nations. The U.S. is not alone in its actions. The G7 and EU have coordinated to exert economic pressure on Russia by targeting Russian oligarchs, freezing their assets, and limiting their business operations in the West. However, experts continue to debate whether these sanctions are truly effective in influencing Russian policy. This standoff could establish a new precedent for using financial assets as diplomatic tools. Critics caution that these measures may destabilize the US dollar's status as the world's leading currency, potentially triggering unintended consequences such as retaliatory actions from other nations or a breakdown of international legal standards. Russia has not been passive, responding with its own countermeasures against Western companies. Firms like Deutsche Bank, UniCredit, and JP Morgan have become targets, with Russia taking temporary control of Western-owned businesses within its borders. This escalation presents serious risks for remaining foreign companies in Russia, likely discouraging future investment and further isolating Russia from the global economy. To legitimize these asset seizures, Russia has established a legal framework, with courts issuing rulings to support these confiscations and President Putin's decree providing a formal basis for such actions. Additionally, Russia has created a compensation system for sanctioned Russian individuals and companies, mirroring mechanisms found in Western nations. This framework paves the way for reciprocal actions against Russian assets abroad, potentially escalating the economic standoff further. Strategically, Russia is aiming to reduce its reliance on the US dollar, a move with potentially significant long-term implications for global finance. They are increasing the use of alternative currencies in international trade and developing their own financial messaging system to compete with SWIFT, which could gradually erode the US dollar's dominance as the global reserve currency. Now let's focus on another critical dimension of this global economic conflict: US sanctions on Iran's oil exports. The US has intensified sanctions, particularly targeting Iran's oil shipments to China, Iran's largest customer. These measures extend beyond oil exports, impacting Iran's broader petrochemical industry and the financial institutions supporting it. This strategy aims to curb Iran's oil revenue, a vital component of its economy. These sanctions could have substantial global repercussions, potentially causing disruptions in oil supplies and driving up prices worldwide. Additionally, they are straining the China-Iran oil trade, prompting both nations to explore creative ways to sustain their economic ties. This situation could have far-reaching effects on global energy markets, influencing prices and economies on a broad scale. Like Russia, Iran is not passively accepting these sanctions. Instead, it actively seeks to bypass them by selling oil covertly through complex networks of shell companies and intermediaries to obscure its origin. Iran is working to develop alternative financial systems for processing transactions outside the US-dominated financial framework. On the diplomatic front, Iran is rallying support from other nations to counter US pressure and maintain its oil exports. This leads to China's role in this geopolitical landscape. As the world's largest energy consumer, China has been diversifying its energy sources, reducing its dependence on Iranian oil, partly due to US sanctions. However, it has also broadened its energy diversification strategy by increasing oil imports from Russia and other Middle Eastern countries, capitalizing on discounted prices from nations under sanctions. China is also investing heavily in alternative energy sources, including coal, gas, nuclear, wind, and solar power, a shift poised to impact global energy dynamics. Beyond diversifying its energy portfolio, China aims to increase the use of the yuan in international transactions, potentially challenging the US dollar's dominance in global oil trade. By developing alternative payment systems, China is establishing a financial framework that could gradually shift away from the US-centric global financial system. However, China faces a delicate balancing act as it manages relationships with both the US and Iran. While it views Iran and the broader Middle East as essential to its Belt and Road Initiative, China must carefully navigate US sanctions while preserving its economic ties with Iran. Now, if you like this video, check out this next video right here.